makes us human? I think it's one of those questions that sounds simple until you actually try to answer it, because the obvious answers start to fall apart pretty quickly. For instance, people often say that intelligence is what makes us human. And sure, humans are smart. We have built cities and satellites and the internet. We can split atoms and map galaxies. But then I think about all the people I know who are loved, not because they're intelligent, but they're kind or funny or patient or simply because they're themselves. And besides, if intelligence is what makes us human, then what do we say about someone with a severe intellectual disability? Are they somehow less human? Of course not. Then maybe it's language. Humans communicate through language in incredibly sophisticated ways. We write books, we tell stories, we pass ideas across generations. But there are people who cannot speak. There are people who cannot read or write. There are people who communicate in ways I may never fully understand, and yet they're still human. The same problem seems to appear every time I try to define humanness. The definition starts out sounding clever, but eventually it excludes somebody. Usually somebody vulnerable, usually somebody whose humanity most needs protecting. And history shows us where that road leads. For centuries, people denied the humanity of others because of race, religion, disability, gender, or class. Humans have an astonishing ability to decide that people like us deserve dignity, while people like them deserve less. And if I'm being honest, this isn't just a historical problem. I do too. Not in dramatic ways, I hope, but every day I'm tempted to imagine other people as simpler than myself. It's easier for me to understand that I contain consciousness, that I have fears and dreams and regrets and complicated reasons for doing what I do. It's harder to remember that the stranger walking past me contains just as many. That every person I meet is the main character of a story I almost know nothing about. And you have your own ideas to share just like mine. The deeper I think about what makes people people, the harder the question becomes. Because maybe what makes us human isn't a specific ability. Maybe it's not something we have, but something we recognize. Now, here's what I really believe. I believe that every person possesses an inner world as rich and complicated as my own. I can't prove that. In fact, I can't prove that any of you are conscious at all. For all I know, everyone else could be a remarkably convincing robot and I could be the only real person here. But I don't believe that. I choose not to believe that. Instead, I choose to believe that every single one of you has experienced heartbreak and joy, that you laughed at something ridiculous, that you worried about the future, that you stayed awake at night thinking about something you couldn't control. I choose to believe that your lives matter. And when I remember that, the world changes. People become harder to ignore. They become harder to hate. They become harder to reduce to a stereotype or a label. And maybe that's where humanity lives. Not in our intelligence, or our language, or our ability to build civilizations, but in our willingness to acknowledge the consciousness and complexity of each other. I believe that when we acknowledge each other's consciousness and complexity, we lead better lives and feel less alone in your grief and joy. I believe that we are human because we believe in each other's humanness, and we can listen and work together to elevate each other's suffering. And in that sense, I think being human is both something that we are and something that we should always aspire to be. Now, of course, I might be wrong. I often am, and that's quite human as well, I think. Thank you.